Welcome to Ghostly.
Is the curse of the ninth real?
Ghostly is a podcast that comes out every other week. In each episode, we take a ghost story or paranormal event and look into its complete history. Rebecca then gives us evidence proving that the story is real. And my job is to debate those pieces of evidence and get you, the listener, prepared to vote on if it's real or not. If you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button.
And I'm Rebecca and he's Pat.
Absolutely. You sound very unsure about that.
Yes.
Well, one thing I am not unsure about is that we will be at C2E2 on August 6th at 5:30 doing a panel with the great Scott Larson.
Absolutely. We are so excited. It's the Chicago historic landmark hauntings.
Chicago Haunted Landmarks.
There it is. Yes. I threw in the historic in there. No, super excited to talk about all the awesome ghostiness around Chicago while also looking at all the fun cosplayers and meeting the celebrities, and it's going to be super fun.
It is definitely going to be fun. We always enjoy C2E2, but what would make us enjoy it even more is if you came. So we would love to have you there if you're in the Chicagoland area. And if not, just hop on a plane.
Just fly here.
Just fly here. That's all you got to do.
Or drive. I mean, whatever, you know.
And then pay for C2E2.
Yeah.
And then we're free once you paid.
Yeah, absolutely. You can just, come by.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is our 99th episode, Rebecca.
That is crazy.
And we thought we'd try to keep with that theme and talk about the curse of the ninth.
Curse of the Ninth on the 99th episode.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Of course, we're not talking about podcasts, though, right? So we're not cursed. We are talking about the Symphony.
Ooh.
Yeah. The concept of this episode came from the person who plays the intro and outro and almost all the classical piano that you hear on Ghostly, Rebecca's brother, Michael Rivers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, we really appreciate all that he's done for us. And when he brought up this concept, I was like, we have to do it. I mean, we did the 27 Club, right?
We did. It's somewhat similar. I should say very similar, but it's similar.
Yeah, I will note that I don't know much about classical music or the symphony.
And I'm not going to say that I know a lot. Maybe it's a little bit more. We're going to try our best with everything, but we did consult with Mike on this. So, he definitely gave us a lot of information. He tried to help me with pronunciations today.
Yes, because
so we're going to do our best.
Yeah, because I am not a classical buff, so I do not know how to pronounce a lot of these names, and I will butcher them up. So Rebecca's going to help in that department.
Yes.
This is going to be a really interesting episode as far as that goes.
We are all going to learn, and it's going to be fun.
So there are two ways to get shout-outs on Ghostly, but we don't have either of those. So one of the ways is to give us a 5-star review or any review on Apple Podcast. The second way is to become a member on Patreon. You just go to ghostlypodcast.com and click on the Patreon link in the menu bar. We have a lot of different tiers to choose from. I'm sure one that will fit your budget.
Absolutely. And some of those tiers will get you to Ghostly X, which is our other podcast that we have just for Patreon listeners or subscribers, I should say. And we mentioned Scott Larson that we're going to be speaking with him at the panel at C2E2. We did an interview with him on a Ghostly X episode a few episodes ago. That was really interesting.
Yeah,
he has super interesting ideas on the paranormal and what happens after you die. Like, we get into all the philosophical fun. Yeah,
we don't have to stick to one topic then. That's
right.
Really interesting.
We can talk about all different stories. He's an expert on Chicago cemeteries.
Why would you say that?
Because that is what he writes his comic book about.
Oh, what's his comic book called?
It's called Visitations.
Oh, Visitations.
And it is the story of it's the story of Chicago as told through the residents of its oldest cemeteries.
Oh, wow.
So it's really, he has these, it's a crime fighting team, but it's like the characters are the characters from cemetery monuments.
Yeah.
It's really weird. Anyways, he knows a lot about the cemeteries. He told us all about them. So if you check on Patreon and you pick a tier that has Ghostly X attached to it, you'll get to hear that interview plus a ton more.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I've got some listener mail.
Oh, awesome.
All right. So we've got the second part of Damon.
Okay.
So remember...
not Damien.
Not Damien, Damon.
Okay.
So in the last episode, he told us a story, super creepy. Sounded like his sister was like astral projecting or something was going on.
Or just changed her clothes and...
No, super creepy. Anyways. Okay. So this is another story that involves his sister.
Okay.
Okay. So he says, my second experience also involved my sister, Kate. One morning, Kate and I had woken up early before the rest of our family. I heated up some waffles for the both of us. What a nice brother.
Wonder if they were Egos.
I'm sure they were Egos.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I don't know, but I would imagine. Now, my brother would have never done that for me.
Well, I just want to say that Ego is not a sponsor of Ghostly, but they could be.
They could be. I'm sorry. My brother is very good at playing piano, but he would not have made me waffles as kids. No, I'm sure he would if I had asked him. All right. I heated up some waffles for both of us, and we sat down at the dining room table to eat. I noticed something out of the corner of my eye as I was pouring syrup on my waffles. I looked directly across the table from me and saw a hand moving side to side.
What?
I remember thinking I was imagining it. I had thought to myself I shouldn't say anything because I didn't want to scare my sister. As soon as I finished the thought, my sister yelled out, "Damon, look, a hand!" I couldn't believe it. She was seeing it too. I decided to go to the other side of the table and see the hand up close. My body felt heavy as I got closer to it. I didn't let the hand leave my sight until I looked under the table. There was nothing else but the hand. As I lifted my head back up, it was gone.
Oh, wow. Well, I usually will not, debate anything in these listener mail things, but this one I feel the urge to.
Oh, okay.
Because obviously you just needed to say Lego my ego. And then it would have been gone completely. Right?
That's the magic words for
Lego my ego.
Lego my ego, and then the hands go away.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's what always happens when you make Egos is that somebody tries to steal them. Yeah.
Well, I think it sounds like a parallel dimension to me. But anyways, thank you, Damon, so much for sharing those stories with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. And we always want to hear your stories. I won't always make silly remarks, although for most of them I will probably. But you can send us a story at email at info@ghostlypodcast.com or use the contact us form on ghostlypodcast.com if you forget info. Or one of our favorite ways is to actually get stuff in the mail. It's been a little bit since we've actually had something in the mail.
We love mail.
And that would be P.O. Box number 264, Geneva, Illinois, 60134. Don't bother writing that down. It's at the footer on our website, ghostlypodcast.com. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll see it.
All right. So
no polls this time.
No, of course there's polls.
What?
There's always polls. Well,
Why?
I mean, most of the time there's polls.
Why do we do so many polls?
Well, because that's what we do. That's the ghostly thing.
That's like the concept?
That's the concept. So I'm guessing we should have some polls on Pap's mansion.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Yes.
Yeah. And are you ready for these results?
No, never. I'm never ready for the results. But just go ahead, rip the Band-Aid off.
All right. Well, yes was 30.8%.
Wait, that would...
So none, or no, sorry, not none, no, 69.2.
Yes. Whew. Wow.
Yeah. So you won that one.
I haven't won one in a little bit, so that's really good.
Now, what was the overall rating?
I have a feeling I'm going to win this one today.
Okay.
So.
Well, we'll see.
So, you should definitely go vote.
I won the 27 club, so.
Yeah, you should definitely go vote. Go to ghostlypodcast.com, click on the polls button at the top there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the overall rating, people could now vote on how haunted they believe something is. 1 being not haunted at all, 10 being the most haunted place ever. We had a 4.08.
So that's actually a little high, like especially for something being a no. I mean, people said no, but it wasn't like a strong no, is what I would say.
There was a couple of votes that people said no and gave it 10. So I don't understand that.
I don't know. I
think what they're saying is I am confident that it was not haunted, so I gave it a 10.
Oh, I see.
But that's not how this works.
Gotcha.
It's the overall rating. So,
gotcha. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, are you ready for a ghost story?
Absolutely.
It's time for a spooky tale from Rebecca.
I have done everything I can, but I fear that it is not enough. The curse has decided to come for me. My daughter Mariah has died, and my wife has found a younger man, though I suppose she is at my side for now. I saw what happened to those before me who tempted fate, who tried to go beyond what we are capable of. The music now is tempting fate, and so have I. Our Beethoven could not finish his 10th. Many do not even get that far. So I hatched a plan. I wrote a 9th symphony, but I didn't call it my 9th, or even a symphony. So I dared to write a 9th and call it so. And I have lived. But in my grief over my daughter, I decided to tempt the gods and write a 10th, calling it the 9th. But they seem to have known. I fell ill in New York and have tried in vain to get better. Alma brought me to Paris to a sanitarium, but so far there has been no improvement, and I must say I fear the worst. The curse has found me, and I will join my Mariah soon. I beg all future composers, learn from my mistakes.
All right. So that was completely made up then.
No, that is based on something that happened to one of the people we're going to talk about today.
Who?
Mahler.
Mahler. Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay. I look forward to it. But before that comes the Pat Facts.
Pat Facts. We are excited to announce a new way you can support Ghostly, joining us on Patreon.
There are many reasons to become a patron. Not only are you helping Ghostly cover its own cost, but you can
get Ghostly episodes early.
You can get up to 25% off Ghostly gear.
Get a shout out on the next episode.
You can get a priority request for a new episode.
Get more Rebecca's creepy bedtime stories.
And the biggest news, you can get exclusive content with our new show called Ghostly X for the weeks that Ghostly does not have a new episode.
As well as many more cool rewards that we can't wait to share with our patrons.
So please, help us become the podcast that we've always wanted to be. You can sign up by going to ghostlypodcast.com and clicking on the Patreon link on the menu bar.
Pat's Facts. From a skeptic point of view. Pat's Facts. He presents it all to you. Pat's Facts.
All right, so we are back, and the Pat Facts are sponsored by Tarot by Ta.
Ta is a professional tarot card reader with over 20 years of experience.
He reads at in numerous public events, private parties, and personal appointments throughout the greater Chicagoland area.
He also does his readings worldwide using online services like Zoom.
And the best part of it all is he's hashtag Team Skeptic. So, I mean, a lot of people ask us, how can he be Team Skeptic and be a tarot card reader? And he explained it to us. He said that sometimes he cannot explain things that are happening, and that it's still, it still has an impact on the person.
Absolutely. And he still, even if it's not mystical, he still believes the cards are helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. To find out more about Ta, visit and like his Facebook page at facebook.com/tarot by Ta, and you're going to put that in the show notes, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So let's get into the Pat facts then. So this is going to be a very interesting one because people have told me, Rebecca, that I am bad at pronouncing things.
Yeah, so you've mentioned.
So anytime that I'm struggling with one of these things, I'm going to point to you and you're going to pronounce that word.
All right.
And it's mostly going to be names, right?
Probably, but we'll see.
So, yeah. So the first part of this, though, is I was, I think I know what a symphony is, but I wanted to be sure. Because to me, it's like, it's all classical music to me as a symphony, kind of, but it's not true.
Right. Well, plus we have to remember, so there's this gets confusing. So there's symphony that is a musical form, like a piece. And then it got so popular that the group that plays symphonies are sometimes also called a symphony, even though, they're also an orchestra. Like you go see the symphony, you're thinking of it like the group of people. But that's an orchestra.
Okay.
I mean, you can call it a symphony. I mean, it's a symphony orchestra, whatever you want to call it. But we're talking about the music.
Yeah, I did get a definition of it. A symphony is an elaborate musical composition for a full orchestra.
Exactly.
It is typically 4 movements, and at least one of those is a
sonata.
Sonata, yes.
So it's very. I'm sure you're going to talk a little bit more about some of these things, but it's definitely a very structured piece.
Yeah,
like there are rules in order for something to be called a symphony.
Well, now it is. We're going to get into that.
Yeah, exactly.
So symphonies emerged from Italy's Neapolitan school, founded by
Alessandro Scarlatti.
Thank you, Rebecca. As overtures for operas around the 1700s. The word symphony comes from Symphonia, derived from the Greek syn, meaning together, and phona, meaning voice or sound. It meant playing together. The perfect name for this new genre, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So in the early 18th century, Czech composer
Johann Stamitz
wrote and conducted several
sonatas
for the famous Mannheim Orchestra, extending the sonata form to 4 movements, thus creating the blueprint of the symphony.
Yes.
But back then, they were typically used to back up a soloist, so like a vocalist in opera. That's why I get this so confused, because like to me, an opera is a symphony. It sounds like it.
Yeah.
But it's not.
It's not. Yeah.
But it's not. But it started off that way. Or a soloist in a concerto. So
Joseph Hayden
appreciated the symphony's potential to accompany the magnificent spectacles of fireworks shows and grand balls, where he was the court composer. In total, he composed 108 symphonies.
Wow.
Yeah, that's something.
That's impressive.
After 108 works,
Hayden
had mastered the classical symphony form. The first movement,
Allegro,
was fast and lively, followed by a slow
Andante.
The third movement,
Minuet and trio
of dance suites, led to the finale, which was lively and bombastic.
Oh, yes.
I love that word. With this, he propelled the symphonic form to the forefront of musical creation.
Yeah, so a symphony follows, again, a traditional symphony follows the allegro, like a fast, kind of lively start, then it slows down, then it's like a dance-ish kind of, section, and then the last is like that, big bombastic ending
Now,
that we all love.
I will say for anybody that has not heard a symphony, when you go to the symphony, right, you will get a playbill kind of thing, right? And you will try to follow it, and it will say that this piece is slow and this piece is fast, and that's how I judged it. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, we went through a slow one, so now this is obviously the fast one. No, I was totally wrong. It just kept going and going and going.
Well, now, I think what you saw too, though, was not an actual symphony piece.
It was the previous way, but not the more modern way.
Right. I mean, there's all kinds of classical music.
Yes.
Oh, I mean, I used to teach the humanities stuff. And so it's ghostly listeners, we could go on and on and on about all of this. And I'm sure many of you know this better than either of us do. The vocabulary can get complicated.
Yeah, it can.
But yes, typically the movements are, when you don't applaud in between the movements, it's like there's just like a little pause in between each of them.
Except for me. I will applaud it.
Well, there are people that will. And, some people are sticklers for that.
And then there's people that just laugh.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes people get inappropriate.
Do you want to tell the story of that?
Oh, well, there's me.
Yeah.
I laugh at the symphony. No, you know what? I've gone to, my mother would take my brother and I to the symphony all the time, or to the orchestra all the time, growing up. And so I'm kind of, I got comfortable there. But I took Pat to see, actually, it was a pianist that we saw. And
at the symphony.
At Symphony Center in Chicago.
So that's where it gets confusing.
That is
too.
where it gets confusing. Yeah. And we were with my brother. And there was you told me it was a man. I wasn't sure if it was a duck. I don't know. But for some reason, this person, when they would sneeze, sounded like, yeah.
It sounded like Donald Duck.
It sounded like Donald Duck. And every time, and in my mind, I was just picturing Donald Duck sitting behind us doing that. This was before, pandemic time. So, it wasn't like dangerous. It just was funny to me.
But also, I will say that there were two people, older women in front of us, that were fighting.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
Like they were having a good old fight.
They were about to fist fight.
Yeah.
It was that close.
It got intense.
Yeah.
So,
anyways,
a lot of laughing at the symphony sometimes.
To go back to what we were talking about, Hayden was actually considered one of the fathers of the symphony because of him mastering the modern day one.
Yes.
And creating that one.
Yes. Mike told us he's the father of the modern symphony.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And when we say modern, we're not talking modern. It's not like,
No, this is from the classical period.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, it's all classical music, but this is the period of time, or actually this is really...
The Romantic.
No, this is actually classical.
Okay.
And then we're about to get to the Romantics.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So it became so popular, and just like anything popular, they looked at ways to structure these symphonies and profit from its diversity of sounds within the orchestra. So one of the things that they did was to limit the amount of movements to 3 or 4. Before that, could be 20, and it could literally last all day.
Yes.
Yeah. It still does, kind of.
We'll talk about Mahler, but yeah.
With this, they became even more popular and moved from what they considered dance halls into much bigger concert halls.
Yes.
So the classical symphony was a rigid construction. Each instrument and each movement had to follow a set of rules for the work to be considered a symphony. This didn't frighten the young Mozart, though, who composed his first symphony at the age of 8.
Yeah, he really was the prodigy. I mean, he started playing publicly when he was 5.
Yeah, he did,
We'll say
absolutely. His 41st and last symphony presented something quite different, though. Nicknamed Jupiter, it marked another turning point for symphonies. The final movement is where Mozart really mixes things up as he creates an interweaving fugue of the piece's 5 themes in what is said to be one of the most exciting bits of Western musical craftsmanship. Would you agree with that?
I mean, again, it's beautiful and it's amazing to see how things changed in his lifetime. I mean, there's a reason we talk about Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven as like the 3 guys. I mean, obviously Hayden is huge and others as well, but like they really mark the growth of what we call classical music.
Absolutely.
And Mozart especially.
So by extending the form, Mozart paved the way for other composers to experiment, allowing Beethoven and his revolutionary symphonies to make their indelible mark.
Yeah, it was interesting. We'll talk about Beethoven here, but my brother was telling us that, that we have no idea if Mozart and Beethoven ever met. But teenage Beethoven and like 35-year-old Mozart were in the same city at the same time at one point. So it's possible that they did, or at least that Beethoven like maybe saw Mozart or saw his work being performed, something like that. Certainly inspired by him.
And back then, I mean, that was what you would do for like entertainment.
Oh, sure. Again, if you don't have like a radio at home, you don't have an iPhone,
But also back then, a lot more people played musical instruments.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, again, so if you wanted to have a party and you wanted to have music at your party, you needed someone to play the music.
Or you needed to play it.
Or you needed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you ever watch any of those, Jane Austen, things, there's always, the one sister that plays the piano while everyone else dances.
Little Women.
Yeah. Same thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's always somebody that in the household that plays the piano. That was their entertainment.
Right.
And that is also the reason why some of this music is so complex, because there were so many people that understood music.
Sure.
So it could be more complex than it is today.
But this is, as you kind of were saying earlier, when it moved to the bigger concert halls instead of just, that's what you were just telling us, is like it kind of moved from just being something in the home or a smaller stage to like, no, we're actually just going to go and watch this really complicated piece of music.
Yeah, absolutely. And Beethoven revolutionized the symphonic form, building on what Mozart had set in motion. So if it wasn't for Mozart, Beethoven probably couldn't have done that.
Oh, no, definitely.
Yeah. So he enlarged the orchestra. So what Mike was saying is sometimes when they're playing Mozart, they will limit how many instruments are in the orchestra.
Right.
Because Beethoven was the one that actually expanded it.
Well, so he said that Mozart, before he passed, so this was after Beethoven got popular and did all of this, that he did one time get to hear one of his symphonies played with the bigger orchestra, and he loved it.
I'm sure.
I guess he wrote a letter saying that it was how great it was, and then he passed before he ever could hear one again. But yet
so solidifying
when we play
too.
now, only play it with the smaller orchestra because that's how it was done back then.
Yeah.
But he loved it.
Huh?
Like he wanted to hear it with the big orchestra.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doubled the duration of the works. And in the third movement, occasionally replaced the minuet that he hated with a scherzo. A minuet is a slow ballroom dance, and a scherzo is a light and jolly movement.
Yes, this is Beethoven, right? He's expanding on all of this.
Yeah, and I don't really find it to be that light and jolly, but I get it. Yeah,
Beethoven can be.
Yeah. So Beethoven's compositions are monuments of change, catalyst of the evolution of the symphony.
Those who understand my music must be freed by it from all the miseries which the others drag about with themselves.
Yeah, and that was from Beethoven. Beethoven actually said that.
Yeah.
Which sounds like a Beethoven thing to say.
He definitely thought his music was awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was in a letter to his friend.
Bettina Brentano.
Yeah. His commitment to musical freedom resulted in Symphony No. 9, the first symphony with a choir and soloist, establishing the basis of the Romantic and Modern Symphony.
Yes, Beethoven's Ninth is certainly one of his most popular. We were talking earlier. The Fifth is also very popular.
Yeah.
But here's just a little side story: is Michael and I, we had like 1 year. We were in college at the same time. We were at the same college, and he and I both got to be in the chorus for the Ninth Symphony.
Oh.
That was part of the whole thing. He was studying piano, but you had to do like a group thing.
Yeah.
So he was,
and you were playing the triangle?
and I was singing as well, just for fun.
Okay.
And but we actually got to perform at Chicago Symphony Hall. So
Wow.
it was really cool.
Wow, that place is really hot.
It is. It can be.
Yeah.
I will say though, when you perform a work like that, I mean, I'm sure to people that do it professionally, it's different. But like for me, we rehearsed that so much and for so long that while I do love it and I do appreciate it, my memories of it, my association of it is just a lot of rehearsal.
Yeah. Yeah. We believe the curse of the ninth was something that was probably talked about. Okay.
Maybe.
But it was really brought to light by Gustav Mahler, who, after writing his Eighth Symphony, wrote Das Lied von der Erde, which, while structurally it was actually a symphony, was able to be disguised as a song cycle, each movement being a setting of a poem for soloist and an orchestra.
And we can get to this later, but like he's not the only one to do stuff like this. But yes. So he's trying to sneak in a symphony.
He did.
But without calling it that.
But he was kind of able to.
Right. It didn't quite fit the definition.
So this superstition, though, however, was only hatched by Mahler. Before him, Beethoven and Schubert had died before or while writing their 10th symphonies. Upon realizing this, Mahler created the curse of the ninth and led this superstition into popularity by seemingly proving it to be true, though.
I just wanted to add the first notable composer after Beethoven to complete more than 9 symphonies. Not that there weren't others, but the big one was Shostakovich, which there's me saying that one, who lived decades after completing his 9th and wrote 6 more symphonies, after that time. But there were others that broke the curse. There was what is this? Joachim Raff, as well as it wrote 11 symphonies. I mean, there were others, but Shostakovich is the maybe the first notable one to kind of, I want to say, break the curse. I don't know.
Yeah, but before that,
Alexander Gluznuov.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't know that name. That's not a name I've heard before.
So that person stopped work on his 9th symphony in 1910, supposedly due to fear of the curse, and never wrote another symphony. Like he wanted to, but he didn't, and he managed to live another 26 years.
See, there you go. You've offered proof for the curse.
No, just that he felt that there was one.
Yeah,
that's all.
And he lived.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say, though, that a symphony takes many years for someone to write, typically, right?
I mean, so this is where it gets to be like this time frame, right? So you mentioned Hayden wrote 108.
Yeah.
Right?
But that was before Beethoven. after Beethoven that made it a lot more complex.
Right. It took a lot longer to write
Yes.
symphonies. So, yeah. And the other thing that actually Michael mentioned is, it's actually, there's not a lot of financial reward in their lifetime for writing a symphony.
Sure.
Because, like, especially then, now maybe there's like, fair, like a pretty good number of symphonies around the world, though they're struggling. So if you, want to support them, it's always good. But back then, especially, this was a new thing. So, maybe there'd be like 5 symphonies or just 5 orchestras or 10 that maybe would buy and perform your work. So you made more money, of course, making popular music. So it's like you'd work on your symphonies, but it wasn't like you could afford to just write your symphony. You know what I mean? You had to do other work that would make you money in the meantime.
And even now, I would say, percentage-wise, at least, they probably do not make anywhere near where they did in like a Beethoven day or something like that. Percentage-wise, not dollar for dollar.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's, like I said, there's more symphonies worldwide, but orchestras.
But there's just not as many people going to symphonies, though.
Yeah, and also there's so much music out there to perform.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like if you write something, I mean, if you get an orchestra to perform it, like that's amazing.
And most of them will do like a Beethoven piece or something like that.
Right. So you're still competing with Beethoven.
Yeah.
Like he's been gone for years and years.
Yeah.
But you are still competing with him when it comes to getting your music performed.
Yeah. I mean, if you've heard an orchestra, you've probably heard some Beethoven, probably some Mozart too in there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Some Hayden, I mean, all the classics, they're all there. And then maybe you'll hear, I mean, contemporary composing is very different, and it's not the music. It depends, on the composer, but it's often not the music that people want to hear. They want to hear the greatest hits.
Yeah. Well, and nowadays too, when someone is composing something, they could write a piece on the piano, have the sheet music printed out for that and transposed for all these different instruments then.
Well, and then the other thing is, if you look at more contemporary composers or modern contemporary, whatever, the last, 100 years or so, if you're going to write music, you're going to write this kind of music maybe for a film.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
TV.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're still writing quote unquote classical music.
But it's not exactly a symphony anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very different. It's very focused based on what's happening in the scene or what the director wants.
Yeah.
But you're probably getting paid a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than you would be if you were just, writing your art.
All right. Do you have anything to add to the Pat Facts?
Just that it is super interesting. It was a really interesting time of music and art. And I am sorry to get all teachery, but just I love how everything just, within like 150 years, not even, things changed so very much in music, as the technology of instruments got better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And improved. And again, like you said, so many people were playing music as the printing press,
Oh, yeah.
making it so that music could be shared widely.
Absolutely.
I mean, these are all the things that all came together, and again, this is Western music that we're focusing on here.
Well, even when the printing press first started, it was difficult to print music, though.
Oh, sure. And to have a common language.
Do words and numbers.
Absolutely.
So it wasn't until we had the ability to be able to do like copies and stuff like that, like dittos.
Well, no, I mean, they could, they did figure out ways, to print music, but it was definitely really expensive to do. I mean, it wasn't easy. I mean, you could have monks write copies. I guess that's probably...
Which I would do. I have monks write all my music for me.
But just beautiful stuff. And it definitely, again, just changed much. And if you look at the art at the time, through all these time frames, it just kind of goes along with it, and the architecture and like everything just kind of flows together, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, then let's go ahead and take a break. And when we return, we will get to the debate.
Sounds good.
throughout our time doing Ghostly, we've met a lot of great people. People that don't always fit into our episode schedule. And even when they do, we try to focus on the topic of the episode, and we don't really get a chance to get to know them as a person.
That's why we came up with the idea of Ghostly X. Ghostly X will come out on the weeks when there is no regular Ghostly episode.
And it'll have interviews with amazing people and listener feedback from previous episodes. We also can't wait to talk about the paranormal in the news.
We're very proud of this project, and we can't wait to share it with you.
Ghostly X is a Patreon exclusive. You can start listening now by going to ghostlypodcast.com and clicking on the Patreon link in the menu bar to become a patron and help support Ghostly by listening to our brand new show.
All right, we are back, and it is time for a debate.
Let's do it.
All right. Arnold Schoenberg, whose music was heavily influenced by Mahler, described the Curse of the Ninth in an essay on the composer Mahler. He said, "He who wants to go beyond it must pass away. It seems as if something might be imparted to us in the 10th, which we ought not yet to know, for which we are not ready. Those who have written a 9th stood too close to the hereafter." Dun, dun, dun.
Interesting.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Beethoven, a little bit more about Beethoven, because we haven't talked about Beethoven enough already. So, this is just the example, right? That, Beethoven himself didn't know about the Curse of the Ninth, but he kind of is one of the first, it's said, to be a victim of the curse. So his choral symphony, the Ninth, which we talked about earlier, was his last. He did start a 10th. So he kind of laid it out, and he wrote quite a bit actually for the 10th. And there's actually some people, one guy in particular, who have tried to kind of bring it back. You could actually potentially hear Beethoven's 10th symphony, but it's not really his exactly. It's people took his ideas for it and the things that he did write, and kind of from their knowledge of him have tried to recreate it, basically. He died on March 26th, 1827 at the age of 56. And he had two friends, maybe a third, that were present when he passed. And one of his friends that was there said that at about 5 p.m., there was a flash of lightning and a clap of thunder. Quote, "Beethoven opened his eyes, lifted his right hand, and looked up for several seconds with his fist clenched. Not another breath, not another heartbeat more." He was definitely, he kind of had been sick for a little bit, and,
But what parting words,
Yeah,
those are really cool. I hope that when it's my time, I could say something as prolific as that, right?
Right. And, that you were just, shaking his fist at the lightning and the thunder.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that the lightning and thunder was the curse, but I'm not saying that. I don't know.
All right. Well, okay. So first, I want to bring up Mahler, because you talked about him first.
Mahler, yes.
Mahler. And
we are going to talk more. I do have more on Mahler, but
okay.
I just had that quote that kind of...
Well, then I'm going to use this one for multiple then.
All right.
So there's a few issues with the theory. because at the time of him writing this stuff and believing this stuff, there was only two people that actually would have applied to the curse, and that was Beethoven and Bruckner. He wouldn't have known about Schubert's 9 symphonies because what is now called his Symphony Number 9, which is nicknamed the Great, was known as his 7th in Mahler's time.
So Schubert, what is sometimes cited as someone having affected by the curse, but really it's but they didn't even know at the time.
Yeah,
that like he had written.
Mahler wouldn't have known about that.
Gotcha. So Mahler was only concerned about
two people,
Beethoven and Bruckner.
Yeah. And then, of course, we had already gone over this in the history. Mahler made his symphony, and he actually tried to trick death with it,
Right.
And, but technically, he would have written 10 symphonies then. Technically.
Right. Again, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
I got some thoughts on it, for sure. But yeah, he did try to trick it based on what happened to Beethoven. So.
Yeah. And his 9th wasn't even considered a symphony during his time. And it is often included on the curse list. Wrote and completed a 10th symphony, but he withdrew it. So that's where I'm going to go with that one.
Okay.
But there's more. Even Bruckner, which is one of the two people that he was like, hey, those two people died, so I'm worried about this now. And he pretty much invented the curse. Even Bruckner doesn't fully qualify. He died before completing his unfinished 9th symphony. So actually, he only had 8. So brings his total symphonies to just 8, and that just doesn't qualify for this. So he's only fearing one person then at this time. And the main snag to the curse, though, is that it only really makes sense if you concentrate on a relatively small number of 19th and 20th century composers. Because, if you look at some of the other people like Shostakovich, which you mentioned, he wrote 15 symphonies, and Hayter Villalobos, who wrote 12. And then we have Mozart that wrote 41, and Hayden that wrote 108. Hayden that wrote 108. So we're only focusing on a small stretch of time.
We are focused on this weird small stretch of time. That is true.
So that is where I'm going to go with that, is that he wrote this and came up with this concept, and he actually beat it. He actually made his 10th symphony because his 9th was not considered a symphony. So, and he's only focused on the one person, and that's Beethoven.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know that's hard to follow.
It is, and again, there's so many. There's a lot of these composers, and they're all kind of fitting together. But so I guess like for Beethoven himself, he didn't think of it as a curse. He was just, yep, that's just when I died. But Mahler was the one few people later to call it a curse. What do you think? So I guess like for you then, like Beethoven, would you consider Beethoven cursed? Like, would you say that his death, getting to his 10th symphony, the reason he died was because of the curse of the 9th, or would you say no?
Definitely, I would say no, because he was not, he was esteemed in his own day as well.
He was.
Now, if he had been somebody that nobody heard of, and then after he died, then all this music came out and he became extremely popular, that would give me a little bit more credence to it, because he didn't reward from anything. So he got plenty of reward for what he did. he had plenty of acclimates.
He did. Not everybody's famous in their lifetime, but Beethoven was certainly one of them, for sure.
I would definitely say he was brilliant, and the world knew it, like at that time. So, so I'm going to have to go really low on this one. I'm going to go 0 on this one because of the fact that Mahler was just messed up in the head. It's just superstition.
Okay.
Superstition based upon little information.
Well, Beethoven is the first. He's often the most cited. So for me, I mean, again, I am open-minded about this curse. It seems like a curse that only existed for a certain amount of time. Though there are some people that still talk about it to this day. So anyway, so for Beethoven, I'm going to give him a 6. I'm going to give this one a 6 as a possibility. Again, the lightning and the thunder kind of freaked me out. So if it's true, I don't even, again, that was a report.
I just think it's coincidence as far as that goes. And, I do think he died young, right? He died at a very young age. I think it was 43?
56.
56. I was close, I guess. But then again, people died young back then.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not as much medicine.
I mean, women died during childbirth usually.
That's often true. Yeah.
So, I mean, men would live on to be in their 50s, maybe 60s if they were lucky. So,
I mean, you would it's not like you wouldn't ever have a 70 or 80-year-old, but you had to probably be pretty rich.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, then let's move on to, you mentioned this person already. So another composer often listed as being cursed by the ninth is Austrian composer Anton Bruckner. One problem many critics voiced was his habit of continuously revisiting and tinkering his finished works. So he basically had this, he had a compulsion to go back and fix his works. So his ninth symphony, as you mentioned, was unfinished when he died. So he made it to the ninth, but he didn't finish it. And part of that was the fact that he just kept going back and back and back to finish his eighth, or finish the eight before. Okay. I just had to pull this, and it is not anything with the curse necessarily, but just to talk about him and being a weird guy. Bruckner had an obsession with viewing dead bodies.
Ooh.
He became a frequent visitor at funeral parlors and in cemeteries, viewing the bodily remains of total strangers who just show up so you could see them. He sought permission to exhume and see the body of his dead cousin, which was refused. Okay, when the remains of Beethoven and Schubert were moved to Vienna's Central Cemetery in 1888, Bruckner just had to be there. Eyewitness accounts recall that he fingered and kissed the skulls of both composers.
I wonder what that means, fingered. Did he put his fingers in the eyes, or did he?
I would hope it's just like rubbed the skull.
Touched it, just touched it.
It's just a weird wording to use, though.
It is.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then, given his obsession with death, it's hardly surprising that he gave Varian specific instructions on how to deal with his own dead body. Are you ready for this part?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. On October 11th, 1896, he died at the age of 72 in Vienna.
Oh.
Okay. His body was initially released for viewing at the St. Charles Church in Vienna, and 5 days later arrived at the St. Florin Monastery in his hometown of Linz. Between the viewing in Vienna and the burial in Linz, a certain Professor Paltoff mummified Bruckner's body, just as the composer had specified in his will. In 1996, in preparations for the Bruckner centenarian celebrations, it was discovered that the mummy had begun to decay. As such, the monastery arranged for the mummy to take a secret restoration trip to Switzerland. Restored in body and clothing, Bruckner returned to Linz, and officials pronounced the result, quote, like he died yesterday.
Interesting.
I mean, I don't even know how that would connect to the curse, but I just thought that was super interesting.
Well, I mean, I will tell you that a lot of these Renaissance men were very peculiar, I would say would be the right word. Like Da Vinci used to do autopsies and stuff like that.
Sure. And I think he definitely, he was, the Romantics were loved the Renaissance, and they were very into all of that.
Yeah.
And I could see him, but again, he also had compulsions.
He did, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
But let's go back.
All of which could probably be treated with medication nowadays.
I was just going to say. Yeah. So for you, though, going back to your argument from earlier, is because he didn't finish his 9th, he's not part of the curse.
He doesn't qualify.
He doesn't qualify for the curse.
Because the curse is, right? The curse is that after their 9th, before making their 10th, so they have to...
Or in writing their 10th. They don't complete the 10th.
Yeah, but they have to have started the 10th, right? I believe.
It's a gray area.
Yeah, but they have to
at
least have finished their 9th. It can't be during the 9th, because that is like the 9th or the 10th, the curse of the 9th or the 10th.
All right. I guess we can agree with that. So maybe we take him out of the list.
Yeah. And I mean, it seemed like he lived a pretty long life, 72 years old.
Yeah.
Back in those days, that's incredible. So, yeah, he was weird. But you know what? Brilliant, sometimes they have this weird other side, this other tendencies. And as creepy as it might sound, it was harmless.
All right. So you
could finger any skull you want to,
I would be very creeped out if I found out this man came to view my body. I don't know.
But if like Stephen Hawkins was like, hey, I want to see dead bodies, I don't think anybody would give him any static when he was alive to do that.
Well, because he's famous. If you or I asked like, hey.
No, but so is Bruckner though.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I guess he was famous enough for that.
And he was a genius. So, I mean, so we just kind of go along with these genius people. I'm going to have to give this one a 0. He doesn't even qualify for it. He lived a very long life. His mummy lived on and he died yesterday.
I'll give it a 3. It's pretty low. All right. So let's officially talk about Mahler. Okay. So as you said, he's the first to believe in this superstition, or first to, call it that. He freaked out. He developed an obsession with the curse. So after he completed his 8th, let's see if we can just, again, I know we've talked about this now a few times, but he completed his 8th symphony. He decided to come up with a way to not have the curse of the 9th. So he wrote the 9th symphony, but it really wasn't technically totally a symphony, and he didn't call it a symphony, and he didn't call it the 9th symphony. So after he wrote this, not his 9th symphony, he wrote his 9th symphony, which was really his 10th. And he thought awesome, but basically they didn't believe him. So he did die basically before he complete his work on what was really his 10th symphony.
No, his 11th actually.
Well, but that one wasn't theoretically it didn't meet the definition of a symphony, I guess I should say.
The only difference is that it had accompanist.
Right. So it wasn't so he was trying to be tricky. He was like, he. So after he wrote his 9th, it was really his, in his mind, he was like, oh, that was really my 10th. He was like, I did it. I beat the curse. But the gods, the fates, whoever were like, no, the thing that you didn't call symphony wasn't a symphony, so it didn't count. And he died. All right, now I got a quote here. Okay. And I just thought this kind of interesting. Is just a quote about his music. And so if you've never listened to Mahler, one of the things people say about Mahler, it's big, so you have Beethoven, who expanded everything, right? And made it huge. Mahler took that idea and he was like, oh no, hold my, adult beverage. Hold my adult beverage. And was like, I can do this, and made it insane. Right. Yeah. And kind of after him, people were like, okay, maybe we start bringing it back down a little bit. We don't need to sit for 3 hours, for one symphony. Anyways, but here we go. So this is from A Vogel in View. Mahler's music, complicated, intellectual, and emotionally charged, is a reflection of who the man was. And here's what he was going through at the time. And this is me, as an aside, writing his last symphony. He'd been diagnosed with a serious heart condition that he knew would eventually do him in. He'd lost his young daughter a few years earlier, and he had just recently discovered his beloved wife, Alma, was having an affair with a younger man. He was aware of the curse of the ninth, and in his exploration of a 10th, understood that he was likely overplaying his hand, and he did it anyway. Dun, dun, dun.
So with this, I'm going to say that it is more than likely that he was the initiator of the curse of the ninth. He made it up. It might have been talked about before that, but it was officially became people started worrying about it when he started a publicity thing about it, and made it a thing to beat it. Okay. So I'm going to say that he suffered from something that was very much different than a curse. He suffered from fear of walking in Beethoven's footsteps.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. A lot of these people wait until they're older to start writing stuff because they have such a fear of Beethoven.
Oh, especially right after Beethoven?
Yes.
Or
yes.
not that, yeah, within, yeah, I guess we could try to say, if you're, I don't know, the Beatles, it's are you going to be better than the Beatles? You might get nervous about it or something.
Yeah, and even John Lennon, after he heard Bob Dylan play, or no, it was Bruce Springsteen, actually, he said that he was not a musician at all. John Lennon said that he himself was not a musician at all because he heard Bruce Springsteen.
Wow.
And Bruce Springsteen was to him, it was brilliant to him. And he was just I obviously am not a musician. So musicians get in their head. So you're saying, totally.
So after Beethoven, musicians or composers were yeah, how am I going to beat that? And so they kind of delayed starting.
Yeah. I've been playing guitar for a very long time, but I am hesitant to play guitar in front of certain people because I know that they are so much better than me that they will just laugh at me,
They're not going to laugh at you. Would you laugh? There are people in this world that do not play guitar as well as you. Would you laugh at them if they played?
No, but the point is that psychologically, this is how you feel. You feel inadequate, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say that is probably what Mahler's issue was.
That he started later.
And because he really wanted to beat Beethoven too.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Again, to me, he tried, but he couldn't do it. The fates found him. So I don't know. I'm going to give him I'm going to give it a 7 for being the curse. Again,
Okay.
To me, we've had discussions about curses before. They're difficult to figure out. They're difficult to prove. But if you believe in a curse strongly enough, I do think you can manifest it. And so I will say that I think if anyone was affected by the curse, it was Mahler because he really believed it.
Okay. Gotcha.
So what would you give this one?
0.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got a couple more pieces of evidence here, a little shorter.
Let me just say, in order for me to believe in this kind of curse, I have to fully understand where the curse starts. And if it's no longer a curse, which obviously this doesn't seem to be because there's been several people that have composed more than 10 symphonies now. I need to have an ending and I need to know why.
So it is tricky. There is this time frame that it seemed to be a thing. I think part of it is when we get to later times, this is ending in the 1800s, kind of really getting close to the 1900s.
Yeah.
And that's modernity. And so the world totally changes, and
Mhm.
in music totally changes. Writing a big symphony, I mean, it kind of like what you were just saying, like, yeah, Beethoven's already written the best symphonies, so I'm moving on. I'm doing something else.
Yeah.
Liszt was, I'm going to do these kind of, symphonic cycles or songs, and it's just like people start doing different things, and then we get contemporary music, rock and roll and all the other things, and like I said, they're writing music for films, and they're just doing different formats. So to me, I actually still think if you're someone writing big symphonies, it's a risk. A curse doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that everyone is affected by it. Just like 27 Club, not every 27-year-old musician dies, but it's a risk.
Well, I mean okay. So that brings up a really interesting idea to me, is that also with these curses, why are some people able to sneak by and others are not? Where we had the Bruce Lee family curse, and it was like da 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 da. That's what happened. It's like father, son, grandson.
Right.
It made sense. There was a linear path to that.
So you're saying that the Bruce Lee curse is family curse is real. Like, you've heard it here first.
No, but I'm saying this is more just like we are now counting backwards. Just like the 27 Club, we are looking at it after the fact, which not all rock musicians die at the age of 27. And just like this, not every composer that is writing a symphony dies between their 9th and 10th.
So again, I think this is kind of why I picked this quote. It's about the passion and the heart that you put into it. And I'm not saying that composers that don't die, are not putting in heart, but maybe, and again, this is just us theorizing. We don't know, but maybe if you're putting too much of your soul into your work, it's a curse, and you can only do it for so long. And especially if you're writing these bigger, longer pieces, there's just a limit for your body.
Gotcha.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, I've got two more examples of people, and we can. They're a little shorter here. We've got Dvorak. So he wrote a 9th symphony called From the New World, but it was actually labeled his 5th at the time that it came out. So at the time of his death, people did not think he was part of the curse. But after his death, they went back and looked at all of his work and labeled it correctly. Turns out that the New World was in fact his 9th symphony. So when he died, the public may not have known that he had actually written 9 symphonies already, but fate knew, the universe knew, and took him out.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. Okay, because then we have a guy by the name of Sofer, which he is often included on the curse list, right? Where this guy wasn't, this guy was, and he actually wrote and completed a 10th symphony, but then he withdrew some of the symphonies that he did. So it's so he didn't die then because of the curse, because he was able to actually do 10, where this guy, it's the same kind of thing, and it's kind of messed up in this regard. So there's no rhyme or reason for any of this. It doesn't make any sense. It just, as I said, we are looking at it backwards. We are looking at it from finding out that, oh my God, he was on his 10th symphony. He must be part of the curse of the 9th then. When in fact, we could not say, hey, if you write 9 symphonies and you go on to write your 10th, you're going to die, because it's not always true. So I'm going to have to go 0 on this one as well.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got one more.
You didn't give
I didn't
rating.
give my rating. I'm so sorry. You're right.
I don't know if you gave your rating on the other one either.
I did. Okay. 7 for Mahler.
Okay.
So for Dvorak, I'm gonna give him a 6. He's up there with Beethoven for me. I mean, he may not have known, but it happened. All right. So we've got Rolf von Williams. And he had a great career. He wrote a lot of concerti, ballets, film music. So this is a little bit later in time frame. And he did produce 9 symphonies. 3 weeks after the premiere of the 9th, he died suddenly. So he was 86 at the time, but they say it still came as a shock. That a family friend said that he seemed totally normal the day before his death. The next morning, he took ill and died. And again, he had finished his 9th, hadn't gotten to his 10th.
Okay. In 2014, there was someone named Peter Maxwell Davies. Davies, doyen of British composers and master of the Queen's music, produced a 9th symphony. He was asked repeatedly if he shouldn't be worried about the curse of the 9th, a long-cherished myth of classical music claiming that if you manage to write 9 symphonies, you probably won't live to complete a 10th. Famously rational for a creative artist, Mr. Davies laughed at the idea. Then he collapsed and was taken to the hospital. The diagnosis, cancer. But what's really interesting about this guy is the cancer didn't do him in. Nope, he lived on to make his 10th symphony, and no curse could do him in. So, and the same rationale that you bring up from this guy did not work with somebody else. And again, just counting backwards. And the Alexander guy, the one that stopped work on his 9th in 1910. Well, first of all, he didn't write 9, so he doesn't qualify for this list. Second of all, he did this out of fear, out of a superstition. That doesn't prove anything. That just proves that he was very superstitious. If I went around and I said, I am not going to walk underneath a ladder, that doesn't mean that it's real that walking under a ladder is bad luck. It just means that I believe it. And that doesn't give any credence to if it's real or not.
Well, now see, I think that sometimes when we believe in curses, we give them power. And again, this still doesn't take to, Rolf von Williams is often included on these lists. He is exactly an example of someone who made it to his 9th and couldn't make it to the 10th.
And an old man at the age of 86 died. I mean, seriously, do you think he's supposed to live forever then? Is that how that works?
He had fame.
Okay.
So he was going to live forever.
Okay.
All right. So what's your rating?
I'm going to say, first of all, this is getting ridiculous at some point. There is no Beethoven starts it, but then all these other people manage to do it in between, and we don't the curse is not over. Just whoever believes in the curse is the one that dies. And I do have a special place in my heart for people that believe in curses, that they're going to come true. But that doesn't mean it's actually the curse. It means other attributes are in play.
Well, no, I did not say that only people that believed in the curse die, because there are some people on this list that didn't either know about it or didn't believe in it.
Yeah,
that still
Bruckner
died.
that didn't even write 9.
Well, we also have the one I just talked about, Von Williams, who was someone, I have no idea if he believed in it or not, but
he was 86 years old.
Did
Rebecca.
him in. All right. So what's your rating for Von Williams then?
Negative infinity plus.
Nope, not allowed. You've told me that many times.
No, I told you that infinity plus is not.
Yeah. So that
acceptable.
means infinity negative is also not allowed.
What? Why not?
Because this is not opposite day.
All right. So I'm going to have to give this a big fat 0 on this one. It is getting ridiculous.
All right. I'm going to give that one a 5.
All right. So what is your overall rating then?
Okay. So my overall rating then, so I gave a 7, a couple 6s, a 3, and a 4. So we're kind of all over the place. So I'm actually going to end up in a 5.
Okay.
Which is pretty low for me.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a few things here, but I'm not, I'm in the middle on it.
So what does that mean then? A 5 for you? Does that mean like,
Like maybe,
it could be,
like I'm not discounting it, but
you don't totally believe it
I'm
either.
not totally there yet.
Okay.
Yeah. How about for you?
What would it take for you to believe this one though?
You know what? One thing that I found difficult to do,
Mhm.
I mean, not that I tried super hard, but like, it's pretty difficult to figure out like, well, how many like composers wrote Ninth Symphonies and then didn't write the like to get like the numbers. And I think we did that a little bit more with the 27 Club. Some people have done some of that math.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just don't have that for this.
Yeah, I mean.
And so here's one thing I will say. Like when I looked on like even just Wikipedia for like 10th Symphonies, the list is like 20. Like it's not that many. Now, I don't think this is a comprehensive list by any means. But I mean, that's not a lot. Like not a lot of people make it to a 10th symphony or more. Yeah. It's pretty limited, the list.
Well, going back to what you said, I was trying to get in there, but I couldn't, is that, I would love to see numbers as far as not only how many people stopped after their 9th and didn't even start writing their 10th or whatever and lived, but I would like to see numbers of how many composers there were that died after their 1st, 2nd, 3rd.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Again, these numbers, they make a difference.
Exactly. So that's what it would take for me. Like if it was statistically like this really crazy number of people died at their 9th, then I might, start to say, that's interesting. I mean, of course, I probably wouldn't totally believe it, but I would be closer to believing it. So I'm going to have to go overall for this one a 0 because I believe that we are only focusing on a small set of numbers here. And as far as the amount of composers that died after their 9th or during their 10th or whatever we're going to say, it's very small number and it's for a very short period of time.
All right. Well, do you want to go into your closing arguments here?
Yeah, that brings us to the closing arguments. This is our last chance to convince you to vote our way. Remember, you could vote by going to ghostlypodcast.com, clicking on polls. No other way registers a vote. If you are on our Discord channel and you tell us how you feel, that doesn't register as a vote. If you post it on Society or you comment on one of our posts that you don't believe it's real, those unfortunately don't count.
I mean, we still love the comments. We love the conversation,
but you should also go vote so that your vote is counted in this. We are each given 1 minute of uninterrupted time. We will time each other on our cell phones because Rebecca likes to sneak in extra seconds.
Not true.
Absolutely true. So, Rebecca, are you ready?
Yes.
And let's begin.
All right. So, we don't have hard numbers for this. And so it does make it difficult. However, I picked, 5 today, but there are more. And again, I think what really struck me was that list of people that wrote 10th symphonies. It's not that huge. I mean, even if you add another 5 to that list or 10 or something that's a pretty large percentage of people that write symphonies. And so I do think it's a high number, but I also understand that there are some valid reasons for that, starting later in life or, better, healthcare, or there are different kinds of symphonies, but I don't know. It still seems like a bit of a high number. And, I can't say totally no.
All right. You tried to sneak in some extra seconds there.
No, I finished it right on time.
But you weren't able to.
All right. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. And go.
So it's very interesting that Rebecca did bring up 5 people, one of which that I had actually dismissed in the Pat Facts. So, but anyways, out of those 5 people, 2 of them probably shouldn't even have been on the list to begin with. And that would bring us to 3. But actually, there are 8 composers that are listed under the curse of the 9th. They couldn't even make it to 9 to make it a better number for this. So, because that would make more sense then, right? Oh, it was 9 composers are going to die between their 9th and their 10th. But no, it was 8. And therefore, I don't see any reason for this curse. There's no reason given. There's no reason why it stopped. And 20 composers have written beyond their 9th. I don't know how many died before their 9th, though. That's it.
That's it. You made it right there towards the end.
Yeah. So, wow, that was a very interesting episode. I mean, I love hearing about these kind of things, and I love the conversation that we had. It's just unfortunate that it's just not true. I mean, I wish it was.
Well, I'm interested in hearing what you all think about it.
I am too. But I want to thank everyone so much for listening. Please share us with your friends and family. As we always say, word of mouth is our best advertisement. We need you to tell people about us so that more people listen and more people can vote.
Yeah, and it's really great. We really appreciate it. We're getting into spooky season, so this is the time to let people know and get ready, get geared up. We got some awesome episodes coming up.
Absolutely, and I would like to do a little mini shout out here to our VIP patrons, which we consider our producers. We have a Ghostly AMA every single month where we talk with them about future episodes and their thoughts about it and stuff like that. And that really helps us to be able to develop these episodes. So the first one is Carrie,
Becky,
Natalie,
Kim,
Ta,
Ernie,
Marisol,
Shayla,
Cindy,
Kevin,
Nicole,
Darnay,
Jessica,
Alice,
Austin,
Aaron,
Hope,
and Candy.
And also, I would like to go back in time here a little bit because today is August 3rd when the episode comes out. But on July 31st, it was one of these people's birthdays. It was Jessica's birthday. And she always attends our AMAs and she always supports us in everything that we do. So I just want to give her a shout out, a special one, and say, happy birthday, Jessica. We really appreciate your efforts.
Absolutely. Yeah, you are an awesome listener and we appreciate your support.
And an awesome person.
Yes.
She likes wrestling.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. So the next episode is actually going to mark a milestone for Ghostly. Do you know what that milestone is?
You tell me.
It's our 100th episode, Rebecca.
What? Because this was our 99th, and so the next one's the 100th?
That's how it goes. Yeah, we just add one to
okay.
it. Yeah. And we didn't die during this episode. So
we could have the curse. Everyone give us hope. Okay. Curse of the 9th. Let's see if we can make it.
There's a lot of podcasts that go beyond the 100th episode. So I'm just saying.
But there's actually a lot that don't.
Yeah. But in that 100th episode, we plan on talking about a place that's really interesting because me and Rebecca have both been there. We've been there together. We've been there separately. We've both enjoyed our time and also probably were saddened by our time there.
That's true.
At Wrigley Field, home of the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, it's so excited. We're coming back to Chicago for that 100th episode. Of course. How could we not?
Yeah. How could we not do one about one of our favorite places in Chicago?
Absolutely. So excited.
It's a great place to see a game, even if you're not a Cubs fan, which you should be. But even if you're not a fan, it's a great place to see a game. It is the second oldest stadium in the
country.
In Major League Baseball, but in the National League, it's actually the oldest.
Yes, definitely. And you know what? I know we have a lot of Chicago listeners or people who come to Chicago. So if you have a story about Wrigley Field, it doesn't have to be a ghost story, but
yeah, just a fun story.
Just a fun story of your time at Wrigley.
Most of it is probably that you got drunk.
Probably, but that's all right. Send us an email about it.
Yeah.
We'd love to share it.
One interesting fact about Wrigley Field that people from Chicago don't necessarily know is that most modern stadiums, they have these automated scoreboards, right?
Yes.
Where Wrigley does it manually still. Like old school, like a person has to be up there and put numbers up on the board.
Yeah, it's really, it's fun.
It is, definitely.
It is, yeah.
So, but that is coming out on August 17th. And until then, stay ghostly.
Bye.